Hello, welcome back to our weekend reflection. Now, the gospel this weekend is the gospel of the King inviting all these people to the feast, the wedding feast. And then the last bit, of course, is someone hasn't got the garment on, the wedding feast garment. A story told very differently in three of the gospels. We're using Matthew's gospel at the moment, so the story is going to have a little bit of an edge on it about the people of God who refuse to follow the voice, the call of their God. And it's got that whole sense of the Jewish prophets who were ignored. And then, of course, it's got the last bit, which is to do with the Christian faith, told through the lens of those who were the followers of Jesus. In either case, there's restraint about replying. There is a strong sense of rejection, just don't want to go. And then the last bit is belonging, about, are you wearing the right garment? Now, that's the way the story is told in Matthew. If you look at the story, say, in Luke, it is about welcoming in those who are outsiders, the blow-ins, as it often called them, because it's finding a place for the Gentile in the new community of faith. But today, Mark Perica will do the reading, this gospel. Mark's a lawyer, does a lot of work in labour law and work with unions and the whole complexity of industrial disputes in terms of legality in the working life of many people. So that's Mark's occupation, his profession, and we'll listen to Mark read the gospel now.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Once more, Jesus spoke to the chief priests and the Pharisees in parables. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Again, he sent other slaves, saying, "Tell those who have been invited, look, I've prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet." But they made light of it and went away, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to his slaves, "The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet." Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered all of whom they found, both good and bad. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man was there who was not wearing a wedding robe. And he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?" And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Well, the story that's so clear, so inviting, strong sense of rejection. In the Requiem Masses that we celebrate, there's a very favourite reading which is from Isaiah, and it's about life after death, and it has the image that we go to the heavenly banquet. And so the reading starts with, "On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide a banquet for his people." It goes on, it says, "There shall be rich food and fine wine." So it's a very Jewish reading. It's from a Jewish prophet. I remember once doing a funeral of a lovely lady who was distinguished in her own way, and they used to just top her up each day. She liked a gin and tonic and other bits and pieces of rich food and fine wines. And so this woman, in her dotage, was always a bit hazy with alcohol. But the family said, look, and she was one of those sorts of women who could control it, and she was always lovely and kind, but you could always get a whiff of alcohol on her breath. So what did the family do? They went and picked this reading saying, on this mountain, because I said, well, Mum's into it already. In Jewish scripture, right through what we call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, there's many a story where the presence of God brings people together for a meal. And of course, the great story of the meal, still practiced in Jewish circles, is Passover. And where did the Christian Eucharist come from? It came from the whole idea of gathering round the table, taking food and drink, and recalling the saving moments of our God for us. So we get the picture that this parable is made up of a lot of elements which are in the Jewish faith tradition, and of course brought by Jesus into the Christian faith imagery, the Christian practice of things. Now, when you look at the story, it's about, do you realize the enormity of the invitation? Are you going to just throw it away? Are you going to scoff at it? Are you going to shoot the messenger, as the story indicates? Or will you respond? So Matthew writes it almost like a double bunger going off, that he wants to have a sense that for Jewish converts, our God has provided for us for many, many years back into creation. For the Christian, or the one that's come over to the way of Jesus, formerly Jewish, but now identifying very strongly with this new way, there's the sense of now Eucharist is the great invitation to be fed and nurtured with the Lord's presence. It then brings us on to the question of not to be presumptuous, because one of the people who eventually gets into the great banquet hall isn't in the proper garment. Now, it's possible that the garment is the robe of baptism. The robe of baptism. Often these days we just take a very simple little ribbon type stole and say the prayer about be clothed in the garment of Christ. But originally, in some parishes where they take the catechumenate very seriously, they have a whole lead up over a couple of years until the reception at Easter time, they would often dress the catechumens, those wishing to come into the faith community, they would actually dress them in a white robe. And they'd actually be baptized in the robe. And in many of these places that take the sacramentality of baptism very seriously, the people may go down into some sort of bath as a baptismal font to be baptized. And of course the white garment gets wet with the waters of baptism. So the person that's not wearing a garment could be the one that arrogantly has thrown off the garment of baptism and will arrogantly just be there in what pleases him, because the person in the gospel is man. So the story is about be aware that you're called to the way of the Lord, to share in the banquet of life. Now there's that edge that says to the Jewish people, why haven't you come over? And at times it's a slip. It's unfortunate, because they have every right to stay with their ancient faith. But for those who do come over, it's all about you share now in the same bread and wine, prayers, psalms, prophets, all those things that give us a sense of the Lord who provides for us at this feast, the feast that sustains us through life. And the final bit is where there is the sort of stirring statement, beware, you don't just presume you can be here and do it on your own terms. The one who calls you to the banquet requires that you live in the way of goodness and love and charity. That's where the story told right toward the end of Matthew's Gospel is told with a sense of urgency. The urgency is it's set in the time after Jesus has entered Jerusalem in the Palm Sunday story, and he's in there, and these are the hours and the nights before he's taken to trial and then crucified. So the whole thing is winding up. There's a sense of urgency, and it's as if the Lord is actually running, and over his shoulder he's saying, are you coming with me? There's no time to waste. Take this seriously. So it's that sense of urgency, of making us self-aware that the call to his way is an urgent one, not to be dismissed easily, and never to be presumed we do it on our terms. And that's why we have Gospels and time to reflect on Scripture, so we get the message. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
El Shaddai, El Yona Adonai, age to age you're still the same, by the power of the name. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, Ekon Adonai, I will praise and lift you high, El Shaddai. I will praise you.